Welcome back, you preps and posers. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics today. Just one of my favorite things, period. My Immortal. I think it is a stupendously clever piece of satire. And yes, I do think it was a trollfic. And honestly, I think we should all at the very least hope it was, considering how much harassment the person who wrote it got. For those of you unaware, My Immortal is an infamous piece of Harry Potter fanfiction, considered to be one of the worst things ever written. It was released on fanfiction.net between 2006 and 2007. Its plot is kind of difficult to describe. Essentially, it follows the antics of the author's self-insert character, Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway. Ebony is a goth, and all of her friends are weird, gothified versions of pre-existing Harry Potter characters. Ebony spends the story going to band concerts in Hogsmeade, shopping at Hot Topic, and having a really drawn-out, repetitious love triangle between her, Harry Potter, now named Vampire Potter, and Draco Malfoy. Throughout all of this, Voldemort is trying to get her to kill Harry, and of course, everyone's outfit is described in excruciating detail. It is frankly genius. Now, there's a lot of dramatic readings and the like of this story out there, and if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with them, but on the off chance you aren't, and honestly, even if you are familiar with the story, I highly recommend checking out the podcast Fang Fiction. The co-hosts are just kind of comedic geniuses in my opinion. Seriously, check it out. Now, with that said, as with any great work of literature, My Immortal has been retold and adapted many times over the years, and that is what we're going to be looking at today. The story is just so weird that to see anyone attempt to tackle it is always just kind of unique. I can't wait to dive in, but before I do, I want to set a few parameters for this first. As I said, I am specifically looking at adaptations of the work. Now, what classifies as an adaptation and what doesn't gets kind of finicky. In essence, it has to be more than just a dramatic reading. There needs to be a bit more effort to try and bring the story to life. There's a dramatic reading that's quite popular by YouTube user .matrix, which I would not count as an adaptation, even though it does include, like, images of the characters popping up on screen and things like that. I think it's a bit too close to just being a plain dramatic reading for that to count. Basically, you're going to need like actors, illustrations, maybe some sort of animation, something to give the story a bit more oomph. With all that out of the way, let's begin.
In the Great Hall, I ate some Count Chocula cereal with blood instead of milk and a glass of red blood. Suddenly, someone bumped into me. All the blood spilled over my top. Bastard, I shouted angrily.
So this is, to my knowledge at least, the most recent retelling of the story to get a lot of attention. This is TikTok creator Artemis the Witch, and she is in fact a goth, which I think adds a lot to this. In this, Artemis plays Ebony, and all the other characters are just kind of played by stuff in her room. Draco is just her hand, Harry is just a Hot Topic shopping bag, Voldemort is a potato. I love this moment where she puts the potato on a broom because Voldemort is flying on a broom in the story. It's just so absurd. This is also notable because it shows that you can retell this story without including most of the really problematic and offensive stuff or the references to self-harm, which is something that unfortunately most of these do not do. So just a heads up if you want to give any of these a look. However, and this is unfortunately going to become a bit of a trend with all of these, this telling of the story is unfinished. She got up to about chapter 19, I want to say, and then just never posted another video, and the last one was put up several years ago, so I think the chances of it getting finished are pretty slim. But that's still quite a bit of the story, so I'd recommend giving her a look.
Vampire was in the hair of magic creatures. He looked all depressed because Draco had disappeared, and he used to be in love with Draco. He was sucking some blood from a Hufflepuff.
So this one is sort of lost media. This was drawn many years ago at this point by a YouTuber who goes by the name Zenya Wolf. For a few years she was quite successful doing illustrated retellings of various Reddit posts that she found. But before she did that, she drew the entirety of My Immortal and narrated it herself, and it was all on her channel until she took it down because it didn't quite match the rest of her content. The good news is that someone has re-uploaded these to YouTube. Unfortunately, It's only the first 33 chapters out of My Immortal's 44. 75% of the story's there, but not all of it. I really like this, and I know I'm going to be saying that a lot in this video, but this is just fun. The illustrations are quite simple, but there's something very charming about them. I love how the characters have this kind of dopey looking expression on their face every once in a while when they're doing something really absurd. They somehow look completely blasé, yet so stupid. It makes me laugh every time. The way she adapts certain passages of the fic to be quite literal is also really fun. It's not my favorite one on this list, and I understand why she took it down, but every once in a while I put this on because it just makes me smile.
You are not fit to be principal any longer. Your old parents is much too dangerous.
Do I have to take a piss?
Spark Lord is planning to kill the student!
This is a weird one, and it's got a bit of an odd story attached to it. So if you go on Amazon and you look up My Immortal, you can find a physical copy of the story for sale on there. And it's notable for a few reasons. For one thing, it includes several sequels to My Immortal that were written by someone who people familiar with My Immortal lore know as Toby. Toby is someone who has several times in the past claimed to be the author of the story despite him not being the author. I don't want to get into it because I want to respect his privacy, but I do find it funny that his fics are published in this. The other thing of note about this book is the cover. The cover is this weird, grimy-looking photo of a woman sitting next to a dresser in this really janky-ass black wig. And this photo is interesting because it is also the cover of a DVD you used to be able to buy on Amazon for My Immortal, the movie. I haven't seen this movie, but I have found the trailer for it. Overall, it looks pretty low budget. I'm assuming, based on some of the filming locations, that this was filmed by a group of college students. It seems to be pretty accurate to the story. A lot of the lines in this trailer are just straight up from the fic, which makes sense. With that said, they do occasionally try to add their own spin on things in ways that I just find kind of baffling. Harry Potter introduces himself as Harry Planter at one point.
My name's Harry Planter.
Draco sings this for some reason.
Break my balls, my achy blue balls.
Just very strange overall. Putting aside what I feel about this though, it must have been at least somewhat successful, or maybe the people who made it just had a lot of fun doing it, because it has a sequel.
It's been a while, muchachos.
The sequel is called My Immortal, the movie, Ebony's Revenge. And just like the other one, I have seen the trailer and that's all I can see for the moment. I don't even think I could find a DVD listing for this one, to be honest. This seems to have much less to do with the original. It seems to be about Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway being on the run for being a criminal or something. I have no clue what the plot to this is. There's a moment in the trailer where there's just a guy in a horse mask. There's someone wearing like an anime Lolita cosplay in several shots of this. I don't know what's happening. But with that said, if I had the option to watch the first one or this one, I'd probably pick this one because it just looks so unique and weird that I'm kinda curious. Even though I don't think this looks particularly interesting, I do hope that the people who made it at the very least had fun. I wish I could say more about this, but that's all I've got. Let's move on.
What is it that you want now, you despicable snobs?
Voldemort has Draco! No! Don't! We need to save Draco!
So this one is made by a YouTuber named Josh Snares, who makes excellent Doctor Who videos. Am I giving this extra points because he is a Doctor Who fan like myself? Or maybe because he is the creator of Karate Nun, the greatest movie about religion or martial arts to ever be made? Maybe. This one has a unique approach to adapting the story, using images from the original Harry Potter movies and a lot of Photoshop to retool them as needed. I adore this. The woman who is playing Ebony is giving it her all.
Empire Potter, you motherfucker!
This actress is also, of course, playing the author, Tara Gillespie, and she has to read out the author's notes, and it's just so good.
A.N. Stiffo! Perhaps stop flaming, okay? If you do not lick it, fuck off. I know it's Mr. Norris. It's Raven's fault, okay, 1-1? You suck, 1!
So much effort has been put into recreating every outfit that's mentioned in the story, and because it's using photos and imagery from the movies, it really drives home how absurd all of this happening in the Harry Potter universe really is. Emma Thompson as Professor Trelawney in goth makeup isn't something I knew I needed until I saw this. This one is also, if I did my math correctly, the longest one on the list thus far, clocking in at 90 minutes, and it's completed. You can go to his channel and watch this in full if you want to. This is one of the less popular versions of the story. I think the final part of this retelling only has like 800 or 900 views, and I think that's a shame. I think this is an underrated gem. Josh, if you're watching this, love your stuff. Seriously, I say give almost all of these a look, but give this one a look.
Outside there was Vampire, looking extremely f***ing hot. What the f***? Weird Draco, I asked him.
Oh, he's being a f***ing bastard. He told me he wouldn't come, Vampire said, shaking his head. You wanna come with me? To the concert?
So, for those of you unaware, the internet historian has somewhat recently been caught having committed an insane act of plagiarism. Please keep that in mind whilst I'm talking about this, and if you decide to give this one a look. The only reason why this one's actually on the list, to be honest, is because A, I'm led to believe that this is many people's first introduction to My Immortal, and B, I wrote the script for this in July of last year. This one is kind of similar to the last one on this list. It's using a lot of images from the movies as assets to kind of animate the story. Unlike the Josh Snares one though, this has what I can only describe as sort of a YouTube poop energy to it. Even if I were to put aside the plagiarism stuff, I wouldn't recommend this as someone's first exposure to the story. I think it takes a few too many creative liberties when the story is pretty damn hilarious on its own, and the embellishments that they put in place are in fact very funny. For example, in My Immortal, Hermione has a new goth name, Bloody Mary, and to reflect this, this series has her character be portrayed by a bottle of V8 tomato juice. Ebony is also like perpetually T-posing and has like insane clown makeup on the whole time. I don't know, this is funny, but I don't think you need to make the story funnier. I'd rather someone just experience the story in its purest form the first time they're exposed to it, which is a bizarre thing to say about Harry Potter fanfiction, now that I say it out loud. The animation and editing on these is really great. Honestly, part of what makes the whole plagiarism thing so shocking is the fact that his videos are consistently very high quality, and you wouldn't expect someone who has put in this much time and effort into his YouTube videos to be as lazy as to just copy an article for one of them. Anyways, I've spoken about it, and we're gonna move on now.
They were having sexual intercourse in the Forbidden Forest. Why did you do such a thing, you mediocre dunces? Because I love her!
So, despite this popping up in my recommendations many times over the course of me writing this video, I didn't look at it until about a week before I filmed this. I don't have a lot to say as I didn't sit down and watch it in full. It's about what you would expect. It's My Immortal via The Sims, with Sims avatars and Hogwarts being a Sims house and all that stuff. It's got some charm to it. My one complaint is that the narration is a bit uneven. Like, it kind of sounds like the people who are narrating it haven't read it before, and they're just constantly just breaking into laughter and keeping it in the video. Maybe that'll be distracting for you, maybe it won't. Your mileage may vary, but it's neat. Oh, this one's also completed. I should probably mention that. So this is kind of an interesting one. It's kind of a parody of My Immortal and a parody of Harry Potter. This one got a lot of press when it was first released. Like, there were multiple articles from many big news sources who wrote about this. And because I have such an unhealthy obsession with this story, I have a lot of opinions about it. It's more using the fic as inspiration to do its own thing as opposed to just retelling the story that already exists. Ebony is a goth, but she's kind of this like self-deluded narcissist, and everyone else is just kind of playing the straight man to her. Like the original story, she does start dating Draco Malfoy, who in this at least starts to develop feelings for Harry Potter, and it becomes a whole thing. The way this kind of transforms the source material into something different and unique but still identifiably My Immortal is quite interesting to me, and a lot of the ideas are very fun. Like, one of the episodes in this thing's first season is about Snap and Lupin, who are the My Immortal fix versions of Snape and Lupin. But in this, they're not just Snape and Lupin with bad names. They're actually clones of Voldemort. Another example of how it uses the source material for fun is that in the second season, there's a subplot about Ebony dating Tom Riddle, as in the ghost in Voldemort's old diary. She's just like, oh yeah, I started dating this guy. I found him in a book in the dungeons. It's also insane to me how many scenes of this were just filmed in public. There are multiple scenes where characters go to bars, and they actually went out and filmed at bars. There's more than one party scene in the series, and there are extras dancing in the background for them. The amount of effort on display here is really cool. The actors are also really fun. It's not Hollywood level acting, but they're quite charming, and you really do find yourself invested in this world and the story that they're telling, more so than you'd think when you consider that this is based on My Immortal. They've got great chemistry, great line deliveries. However, it's not perfect, in my opinion. I recognize that a lot of these complaints are down to the fact that I'm a nitpicking obsessive, but there's a lot of talk in this about how Ebony is a Mary Sue. Snap and Lumpkin from the episode I was talking about earlier discover towards the end of it that she's a Mary Sue and are like, oh crap, she's too powerful for us.
Holy shit, she's a Mary Sue. Oh.
What? No, I'm not.
You're boned.
It's like being a Mary Sue in this world somehow gives you metatextual superpowers. I don't like the term Mary Sue. I think we can all agree that it's a term that should probably be just discarded. And this is from 2015, so it's not surprising that they're using it a lot, but it bugs me a little bit. Just saying. Especially when you consider how this whole idea of someone being a Mary Sue and how that seemingly warps reality ties into the plot. There's a moment towards the end of season 1 where the Death Eaters reveal that they have, and I am not kidding, their own Mary Sue, the daughter of Lord Voldemort, and that she is a more powerful Mary Sue than Ebony is. I don't know, I quite like this web series, but then they throw in something like that and I can't help but roll my eyes at it. I'm sorry. The story isn't really about Ebony being a Mary Sue. It kind of feels like it's there because people have called the character a Mary Sue in the past. It's not like relevant to the show's lore. And yes, believe it or not, this show does have lore. Very confusing, very vague lore. Like, there's a thing in the second season where the Ministry of Magic is secretly brainwashing people into turning into preps or something. In this as well, they have to fight these, like, demons or something who are all named after various tarot cards for some reason. I don't know why. And I recognize that I am asking for consistency from a My Immortal web series, but if you're gonna include all this extra stuff, you should at least make it make sense. It makes the series end up feeling really incoherent, which is a real shame because you find yourself strangely invested in these characters. There's some surprisingly engaging teen drama stuff going on in this. I found myself personally really invested in the burgeoning relationship between Hermione and Ebony, which very briefly turns into a bit more than just a friendship, which was kind of fun. I have one or two other gripes besides those big ones. For one thing, the soundtrack of these oftentimes drowns out the dialogue. It's really distracting and hard to follow at points because of this.
We don't even have a song.
Nope, I'm gonna fake it.
Oh, good, a noodly jam session.
Fun? Look into my eyes. I want the face of a killer.
The first season also has these extremely drawn out magic duels between the Death Eaters and the main characters that just go on for forever and are very boring to watch. This web series had 2 seasons, each one clocking in at a little over an hour if memory serves. And they actually were teasing a third one at the end of the second season, and it just never happened. Which, as much as I've complained about this series, I find kind of sad. I wanted to know what would happen next. I felt like the second season was an improvement on the first. I feel like a third season would have led to even more improvements. It's a shame we're never going to get it. The last season was out in like 2015 or 2016, and there's been no word from anyone since. Overall, flawed but extremely enjoyable.
Hi, my name is Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway, and I have long ebony black hair with purple streaks and red tips that reaches my mid-back.
That's how I got my name.
And a lot of people tell me that I look like Amy Lee.
Okay, so this one is special in my opinion. It may actually be my favorite one in this entire list. It is also the oldest one on this list, and you can kind of tell. This series, or rather 2 videos, was put out in 2010, and I kind of feel like it's very much emblematic of like really old YouTube. Like, this is an example of the dying gasps of YouTube's early days in a way that I find very charming. I don't know, I sometimes miss the era of this platform where everything was low quality and no one had good access to filming equipment of any sort, and so it was just kind of randos making weird films at their houses. I don't know, I just find all that very endearing. In any case, this does feel like a vestige of that time on this website. It's just a bunch of people having some fun with the camera and making something surprisingly entertaining in the process. As I said, there's only 2 videos in this series. It seems like they were going to do more, but they only got up to like chapter 7 and kind of stopped, which I think is a shame. I would have loved to have seen how they would have handled Voldemort flying around on a broom, for example. But what we have is kind of the greatest thing I've seen in my entire life. The outfits are tacky as hell. The fact that all of this was just exclusively filmed at like someone's house in the suburbs is just so good. Just, I love it. This just works in a way I can't really put words into. And despite it only adapting like 12% of the story, they do some great stuff. A few standouts for me are when Ebony and Draco have sex. In the story, it's described as, and I quote, "He put his thingy into my you-know-what, and we did it for the first time." And this is depicted in this series as them just playing with a cup and a straw. There's also that moment when Ebony describes Hilary Duff as having an ugly blonde face, and we just get this image of someone with a blonde wig. I already mentioned the costuming, but the extremely out-of-date gothic fashion of it all just, it adds so much more to this. I could go on. Just seriously, I could. I really wish they had kept going with this. But it's been over a decade now, and there's hardly been a peep from anyone from this project about it. There are loads of people in the comment section to both of these videos that say they want more, and we're just never gonna get it. And I'm sure as much as I and many others adore this, the creators of it don't. I'm sure every once in a while they remember this project and they cringe in embarrassment and just wish they could remember that password so they could take it down. And that tragedy for them is something of a miracle for us. I love this one.
In your words, make a book.
I figured I should briefly talk about My Immortal fanfiction here as well. AO3 has a surprising amount of it on there. It's not like a crazy active tag, but I check it every few months and there's always either a story that's updated or a new one on there. You can find most of this under the Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway / Draco Malfoy tag. A lot of it is also tagged as being fanfiction for the first web series I talked about in this video. I find some of these more interesting than others. A lot of them are just people trying to like rewrite My Immortal but with better grammar or with references to UK culture as opposed to American culture, and I think that kind of misses out on what makes it so great. I guess I can see doing that would be good as like just a writing exercise in improving your craft, but the end result isn't particularly interesting to read in my opinion. A lot of the humor comes from how poorly written the story is, and once you take that out, it's just not the same. Although I will give points to whoever has been translating the story into Esperanto, because I was not expecting to see that on there, and I was absolutely delighted to do so. The ones that interest me more are the ones that don't try and fix the original story, and more use it to tell something new, using it as their basis to do something wholly original. Perhaps, like in one of them, Ebony is a trans woman who works at a punk bar, and she ends up dating the main character from Forbidden Fruit, The Temptation of Edward Cullen, a very bad Twilight fanfiction that some people think was also written by the same author. Perhaps, like in another, the events of the novel American Psycho are retold using My Immortal's rather unique prose style. Another example of what you can find on AO3 is a more loose retelling of the original fic, but in a more canon-precise version of the Harry Potter universe, where Ebony experiences discrimination because she's a vampire, and Brittany, her arch-nemesis from the fic, has been possessed by Lord Voldemort. Last I checked, funnily enough, that fic as well as the ones I've already listed, and many others can be found on AO3 and plenty of other sites as well. There was someone who was pretending to be Tara on fanfiction.net a few months back who was trying to continue it. I don't think it was Toby this time, actually. I think seeing what people do with such a bizarre source material, seeing them try and rework it into new ways is just really fun. When I look at these fics, I see people who, like me, have this insane passion for this story, and it feels nice. I was quite isolated for a long time in my obsession with this fic, and I'm glad that in the last few years there's been something of a resurgence and interest in it. It's kind of insane in a way that My Immortal is so popular that it has spun off into creating so much more fanfiction inspired by it. I think it really does show just how influential and popular this story is. So, there we have it. Every adaptation of My Immortal that I could find that was notable and interesting. This isn't even getting into the loads of other fan projects out there. Shout out to the person who drew every single one of Ebony's outfits on Tumblr like 7 or 8 years ago, and to the people who made this insane physical copy of it. I wish I could get my hands on this. A shout out again as well to Fang Fiction. Seriously, even if you know the story like the back of your hand, listen to these guys. They're great. I love them. Looking over all of these, it's just so amazing to see how much love and affection and fascination there is for this story. It's not well written, and it's emblematic of the worst things people think of when they think of fan fiction, but I kinda love it despite that. None of the characters in them are particularly deep, and if they were real, they'd probably think I was horrifically preppy, and in a weird way, I think that's why I love them. With how awful Joanne Rowling is nowadays, I think My Immortal is a great way to kind of reclaim our memories of Harry Potter, or at the very least to kind of disconnect from them and maybe look at the source material in a way that's not just rose-tinted nostalgia glasses. As I mentioned already, I will link to as many of these as I can in the description below and maybe make up a playlist for them. I may not include the TikTok ones because I just don't want to make her lose those views. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a really fun time exploring this. I had a great time talking about it. I love talking about internet history and culture. If you want to see more of that kind of stuff from me, check out my other videos. Give me a like and a subscribe. I have more stuff coming up, and please leave a comment with your favorite quote from the story, or the name of your own Gothic OC, or whatever else. I read every comment, I'm not even kidding. May Satan curse your enemies, my fellow Gothics. I'll be seeing you soon.